speakers, all the characters from the wonderful pantheon of English literature who were welcoming us. It was an amazing welcome that I received with Queen Elizabeth and Charlie Chaplin and Othello and Macbeth with his brandished sword welcoming us. This is probably the first time in the history of all meetings. Of all meetings I have attended, that somebody comes with a sword and welcomes you. So that was so interesting, so literary, so aesthetic, and of course, so scary as well. So I'm told that we will have a tea break by 11:20. So I will just talk for like 15-20 minutes and then we will break and then we will have the rest of the session. So we are at a 2-day international conference on the digital divide, language, literature and translation. I'm sure you have had a few exhilarating, enlightening sessions yesterday and today morning as well. I was attending through online the session by Dr. Vijender, and yesterday you listened to Dr. James and Dilip Bharat sir. So I'm sure you are already in a far more enlightened state than I am on this topic of the digital divide, language, literature and translation. Ideally, I should not be talking, I should be listening to you based on whatever you have learned, because I heard that you have had a lot of paper presentations as well. So you must be in a far enlightened zone on the digital divide and on the impact of the digital divide on language, literature and translation. Now, this lecture is titled Cleaving Narratives, when the digital meets the medical in humanities. I can see that you understand the title. I have titled it Cleaving Narratives. Cleaving, dividing, that is the usual understanding. Cleaving Narratives when the digital meets the medical in humanities. I keep the title and the theme of the conference in front of me because I have a habit of digression. So I will just digress and then I will not remember what my topic is or what the theme of the topic is. So that is why I have kept all these things with me so that I stay on the topic. If I digress and go out, please come and catch me and bring me back to the podium until 1 o'clock. So my lecture is divided into 3 parts basically. First, I will try to tell you a little bit about cleaving narratives. Using the word cleaving as an example, I will try to explain to you the title of our conference, The Digital Divide, Language, Literature and Translation. The second part of my lecture will be devoted to understanding the relevance of talking about digital, the digital divide in a conference conducted by the English department. Now, if you think about it, 50 years ago, if an English department conducts a conference on the digital divide, people would have said those teachers in the department have gone mad. Because what has the digital divide got to do with literature? See, we are talking about poetry, we are talking about drama, we are talking about T.S. Eliot and William Wordsworth and John Keats, and what has this digital divide got to do with it? But this conference is already happening. So why this conference? And what is the reason? What is the historical and literary and academic and theoretical reason for such a topic to be taken up for a conference by a humanities department? When we think about digital divide, we think, okay, it has nothing much to do with humanities. Probably those science people, of course our principal ma'am is from the computer science department, so she will definitely be in a far better space to enlighten us on the digital divide than any of us poets or teachers or scholars in literature, naturally, because this is not our area. think about it, the principal man from the Department of Computer Science is here, and we are trying to talk about the digital divide. How silly that would be, because she should be talking to us, right? Do we know anything about the digital divide that she doesn't know? And so the question is, why should an English department talk about the digital divide, and how is that justified, especially in the 21st century, which we call the digital age? And lastly, the third part of my lecture will be another example. Then again, what I will try to do is, I will take the medical humanities as an example, and I would try to impress upon you how the medical humanities example can be taken to understand the digital divide, and also to realize that at times the digital divide can be good as well. And when we think that the digital divide is bad, that is the general hypothesis, the beginning perception, the original perception, digital divide is bad and it should go. Now, I would also want to tell you, based on insights from medical humanities as well, and you can apply these to any of the 50 or 60 humanities disciplines that have emerged in the last 20 odd years. So this is the overall structure of my lecture. And so to begin with, let me explain the first part of my title with you. Cleaving narratives. What does the word cleave mean? We have heard of synonyms. We have heard of antonyms. Have you heard of contronyms? Contronyms. Then there are a class of words called contronyms. C-O-N-T-R-O-N-Y-M-S. It has a synonym and an antonym within the word. That is the idea of a contronym. And the word cleave, cleaving, or whatever version of the word you use, is a contronym. What is the point? The word cleave on the one hand means to split something, to divide something, to break something into half. For example, with the axe, the farmer cleaved the log of wood. He cleaved the log of wood into two pieces. Or the poet might say, the lightning flash cleaved the sky. When there is a lightning, you see the sky being divided into two halves, cleaving the sky. Or we can say the death of his mother cleaved his heart, breaking the heart. So cleave has this meaning of splitting something, separating something, severing something, fragmenting something. But on the other hand, cleave has the opposite meaning as well. To unite, to fuse things together, to adhere things. Say for example, you can say a sentence, you can take an example like, she cleaved to her belief in God, despite all the tragedies that happened in her life. She cleaved to her belief in God, in spite of all the tragedies that happened in her life. So what happens? This lady is going through a lot of tragedies in life. She used to be a very pious and religious lady, but normally when people go through a lot of trouble, they will question God. They will ask, why is God so cruel? But this lady still clings on to God. She still sticks to her God. Her faith is not affected despite all the tragedies that has affected her. So this is a dictionary definition of the word cleave. So cleave is a contronym. It has a synonym and an antonym within itself. In other words, it is an oxymoron or a paradox in itself. Hope you understand the idea. The word cleave, so when I am talking about cleaving narratives, I am not only talking about breaking narratives or cutting narratives or dividing narratives into many parts, but I am also talking about bringing narratives together, fusing narratives, clinging on to narratives. So this is the idea of cleaving narratives, and why I have used this particular word as the title of my lecture is very explicit. There are no secrets. One, because our conference is on the divide. We are talking about the divide, and I want to tell you that in every divide there is some unification as well. As we look at some of the examples, you will realize that a division is on many times a union as well. Or maybe you are doing it a deconstructive way when you are looking at division as something that unites. Divide and rule. We have heard these ideas. Now, when we look at the title of this conference, The Digital Divide, Language, Literature and Translation, let me take you through this three. Language first, literature second and translation third. And let me explain how this cleaving happens in language, literature and translation. Now, if you look at language, a word like cleave is a problem. It's a problem. Why? It results in ambiguity. When you use a word like cleave, you are not sure which meaning is it that we should take. And that is why in linguistics we talk about contextual meaning. We have to look at the context to find out the meaning of the word. As simple as that. Now what is this contextual meaning? If you have the word cleave in a sentence, you will understand. She cleaved to her belief in God, though she went through a lot of tragedies. Now immediately, first when I say she cleaved, you are not sure what it is. But once I complete my sentence, you understand, looking at the other words in the sentence, looking at the structure of the sentence, the syntax of the sentence, and looking at the other words, you will realize that no, the first meaning will not apply. It is not about splitting, it is about being, adhered to something, anchored in something, sticking on to something. This is the simple idea of what it happens in language. Now, in language, in Indian aesthetics or any aesthetics, whether it is East or West, normally words have three types of meanings. There is a primary literal meaning that you get from the dictionary. There is a secondary contextual meaning which you find from the words around, and you have a tertiary suggested meaning, which is which happens mostly in literature, where poets or great writers suggest some ideas, conceal some ideas, suppress some ideas. Suppression in an expression to create a lot of impression. This is the idea of the third variety of words. Now, in Indian concepts also we have this idea. They call it apitha. The first type of meaning is apitha, the primary meaning, the literal meaning. The second type of meaning is called lakshana. From the context, you find that, okay, this should be the meaning. You don't exactly know the meaning, but from the context, you look at the meaning, you find the meaning. This is lakshana, and third one is known as vyanjana, the meaning that is suggested. So these are the three ways in which language gives some meaning to us, and these meanings are important in understanding language. While introducing this conference, she was talking to us about Ludwig Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein spoke about language games in finding meaning. And how do you find meaning in a word or a sentence? It is through language games, he says. So what is a language game? Basically, Wittgenstein tries to say that language is a game with its own rules. And there are different situations in language. Say for example, requesting something, or ordering something, or asking somebody for apology, or asking a question. These are all different language rules. This is what Ludwig Wittgenstein says. And all these different language games have different rules, not the same rule. Like, say for example, you have cricket and football. You cannot play cricket the way you play football. You cannot play football the way you play cricket. In a cricket, you hit the ball out of the ground. And in football also you hit the ball out of the ground, but you apply the rules of football to cricket or vice versa, then you are in trouble. So we need specific language rules. Now, these language games tell us that there is something interesting for us when we talk about the digital divide as well. Why? Because when there is a digital divide, the participants are not always there. This is the problem that happens in languages. See, say for example, we are going to have a dialogue. We are going to have a conversation between, say, 4 parties. 4 political parties in Tamil Nadu, they have a problem. They do not agree on a topic. So what you do is, you decide that you will have a meeting between the leaders of all 4 political parties. A dialogue, a conversation between them. Now what happens is, the first political party is very powerful. It comes and sits on the stage or in the audience, it is there. The second political party comes and it is, the security gives them a permission half-heartedly. The third and fourth political party leaders are at the gate. And they are not given a permission because they say that you don't have the registration. You haven't paid the fees. You are not qualified to come here. Now what will happen? Will this dialogue be successful? No, it will not. Yes, it will be successful. For whom? For those 2 parties whose representatives are already inside. But it will not yield any results for the other political parties whose leaders are waiting outside. Same with language games. In our present day culture, English is always welcome. In every dialogue, in every conversation, English is welcome. Whatever conversations happen online, especially, English is the language. Now, you know only Tamil. Then they say, no, Tamil, wait, we cannot have Tamil people entering this discussion because you don't know English. This is the digital divide as it happens in languages. Certain communities, certain languages are always marginalized and their voices are unheard. This is the digital divide in terms of language, and it creates a certain type of hierarchy where certain voices are always heard, certain voices are privileged, given superiority, and certain voices are always muted, always silenced. Isn't it so? This is digital divide as it happens in humanities and as it happens in terms of language, and certain languages are always in the background. Now why is English probably the world's most powerful language, the superior language? Is it because of inequality of the language? Not at all. English is not any different from any other language. It has its own rules and systems, but there is nothing that commends English more than Tamil or Malayalam or Hindi or Telugu or Japanese or Russian. The only reason you can talk about is that the people who speak English are powerful. That is why English is powerful. The people who speak Malayalam or Telugu or Kannada are not powerful. Powerful in the sense they are not powerful on a global scale. And that is why their views are not heard. Their opinions are silenced. This is digital divide as it happens in languages in simple terms. Now, let me take you to literature. In literature, when we talk about ambiguity, we talk about it as an advantage, as an opportunity. Poets, great writers, they use ambiguity as a figure of speech to heighten the effect of language. Isn't it? We have poems where a single word can mean multiple things, and those multiple meanings can change the entire complexion of the poem. We have this poem of William Wordsworth where he says, "No poet can but be gay in such a jocund company." Now, if you look at the word gay as meaning happy, then you are talking about happiness, his happiness at seeing the flowers and everything very beautiful. But then, if you are looking at the word gay to mean a kind of queer person, a kind of heterosexual, homosexual person, for example, then the whole meaning of the poem changes. And ambiguity works like that. Now, there is something very interesting happening in religious texts especially. Say for example, in the book of Genesis of the Holy Bible, there is an interesting statement about Cleaving. There the writer says, therefore the man shall cleave to his wife. Therefore the man shall cleave to his wife. Now the idea is, the context is he's talking about marriage, how important marriage is, and once a man gets married to a woman or a woman gets married to a man, they are united, they are cleaved, they are connected. Now, from the context you imagine that therefore the man shall cleave to his wife. You imagine that here cleave doesn't mean split. It is not saying that the man will split his wife. Probably that is not the meaning. The meaning is after, once somebody gets married, they will be united. This is probably the contextual meaning. And it talks highly of the beauty of marriage and how when somebody gets married, they are bonded in a spiritual union, not just of the body but of the mind and the heart and the soul. But then there is the other meaning also lurking in the shadows, and the other meaning is very much relevant too. What is the other meaning? When a man gets married to a woman, he is being separated, parted with his family members, with his relatives, with his past life at large, and he is beginning a new life. So, parting, dividing, separating from your early life, separating from your early relationships, early friendships, early family bonds. That happens more frequently in the case of women, especially in our Indian context. You know what happens. When a girl is married, she leaves her home, she leaves her father, mother, brother, sister, everybody, she goes to her husband's home. And now what happens? Marriage is a cleaving, but it is a cleaving where you are being separated as well. So these two meanings are valid in literature, and that is the beauty of literature. Literature can afford to have multiple meanings. It is not like a legal book. It is not like a court of law verdict where you cannot interpret it differently. No, you should not interpret. But literature has this possibility, gives us this opportunity of multiple interpretations, and that is why we are talking about multiplicity, plurisignation, all these when we talk about Derrida, when we talk about deconstruction, when we talk about any of these post-structuralist theories. That is the second point. Now what happens in translation? The third aspect of our conference is language, literature and translation. Again I am taking the word cleave. I am bringing you the word cleave, and here we have a serious problem. Suppose you are translating a sentence having the word cleave into Tamil. How will you translate it? How will you translate it? Because the writer has both meanings in his mind, opposing meanings in mind. Therefore, think about that religious text itself, the Bible. So therefore the man shall cleave to his wife. How will you translate it to Tamil? The problem is you have to translate it in such a way that the word that you substitute for cleave should have both the opposite meanings. Do you have an option? Do you have an option in a word in your language that carries these two very different, very opposite yet important and relevant meanings? If not, what will you do? What will you do? If you are a translator, which meaning will you give importance to? Now, if you are a man who is married and having a very bad time fighting with his wife all the time, and if you are translating, you will say, and therefore the man will cleave to his wife. Oh, I feel like cutting her into 10 different pieces. I will take a divorce, all those things. So that is what is there in your mind. And objectivity is impossible. But then you are in love with a person and you are thinking of marriage as a sacred ceremony where you will be united with that person. And now you are doing this translation. You will say you will use some word in Tamil that is like, oh, I will hug her, I will bring her closer, I will embrace her. So the meaning changes in translation. But then there are agonies and ecstasies in translation. There are feasts and famines in translation. And we do not know how can we do justice to this, especially in situations like this where multiple meanings operate. And that is where we have to be very vigilant. A translator doesn't have a lot of freedom. On the one hand, he has to or she has to do justice to the source text. On the other hand, he or she has to do justice to the target text or the target language as well. That is very tough. And this is where translation becomes a problematic area. And this is also where the digital divide comes into the picture. Translators who have access to latest technology, who have access to latest tools, computational tools, for example, the tools from digital humanities, the tool itself will give you all the words in Tamil that are similar to the word cleave and all the options that the person can look at when translating. But what if those tools are not available to you? That is when translation becomes a problem area. Think of an idea like, say for example, when A.K. Antony was the defense minister of India, there was a problem between India and China. And so A.K. Antony, he had gone to some other country, he just returned. So at the airport, the newspaper, the journalist asked him, sir, he's the defense minister, sir, what is your take on whatever is happening between India and China? So Antony said, I'm afraid I won't be able to respond on this matter now. What does he mean? He means to say that because he hasn't learned about it, he doesn't know everything about it, he hasn't got all the information relevant to it, he's not in a position to respond. That is what he means when he says, I am afraid. But many news channels reported, India's defense minister is afraid to speak about the China problem. So just imagine what happens. When things get translated, the meaning changes or the context is uprooted. I will give you another example. The Pope came to India. When the Pope visited India, a journalist asked him, Milord, Pope, the highest religious authority of the Catholics. So they asked, Lord, what do you think about nightclubs in India? Nightclubs and night parties in India. And the Pope was surprised and he asked, are there nightclubs and night parties in India? And then next day the news came, the Pope, when he came to India, inquired whether there are night parties and nightclubs in India. Taken out of context. Just imagine. So these are some of the problems when it comes to translation, when it comes to quoting things out of context. So we need the context, we need the understanding of the context when we are translating. Also, it is not just about words like cleave. The digital divide definitely talks about other situations as well. Think about, say for example, a person, a computer engineer sitting in Silicon Valley talks about the tablet, and you know that he is speaking about the iPad. And a person in sub-Saharan Africa, he is having a chest pain and he is saying, I need a tablet. Now what will you do? Will you go and buy an iPad for him and give? Oh, you have heart pain. So you need a tablet, right? Have it, sir. You want to have a Google Meet with someone, with your doctor. Meaning is contextual. Meaning is problematic. Or you think of a word like apple. Apple. I need an apple. What is the apple? Is the person talking about the apple that the serpent gave to Eve, which Adam ate and there was a lot of problems? Or is he talking about the apple that fell on the head of Isaac Newton? Or is he talking about the apple that Steve Jobs invented and started, because of which a lot of people lost their jobs? Steve Jobs resulting in loss of jobs, creating new jobs. So, which apple? All these things are relevant when you talk about translation. Does your language has the propensity, has the ability to translate certain words? No. None of the language in the world can translate everything fruitfully. But then translation does a great job. What Emmanuel Levinas talks about as empathy for the other. Emmanuel Levinas, the great philosopher, he said we should always have a care and a consideration for the other. Now, basically translation is a way of showing care and concern for the other. How? You do that when you translate. Say for example, there is a beautiful novel in Russian. Now this novel, only when it is translated to English or Tamil can we read it, isn't it? Otherwise this novel is not accessible to us because we don't know Russian language. So the act of translation is an act of compassion even, where you are caring for the other by making the other accessible to the other. Isn't it so? Showing compassion to the other by making the other accessible to the other. And she is saying, please don't stop. She said she doesn't need a break. Our students might not need a break, so we should continue. I am helpless, so your teachers and people are like this. I actually wanted to give you a break and a Kit Kat too, but okay, we will break. Are you happy with the break? Yes. Stomach's full? So, my dear friends, we were talking about silence please, thank you. Okay, so we were talking about how the digital divide applies to language, literature and translation. Once again I will take you back to the idea of cleaving narratives. Now, I discussed the word cleaving with you, but how will you understand that phrase cleaving narratives? Again, there is an ambiguity, because cleaving narratives can mean narratives that cleave or the act of cleaving narratives, the act of splitting or joining narratives. Isn't it so? Cleaving narratives doesn't tell you anything clear about what it tries to say, or there is nothing finite about what it tries to say. I will give you some examples from the famous linguist Noam Chomsky. You must have studied Chomskyan linguistics, competence and performance, deep structure, all those ideas. So the basic two simple examples. One is the sentence, flying planes can be dangerous. Flying planes can be dangerous. Now what is dangerous? Flying planes. So what is dangerous? Planes or the act of flying, which is dangerous. There is a confusion, right? There is a little bit of an ambiguity. Is it, the sentence, flying planes can be dangerous, can be interpreted in two ways. It is dangerous to fly planes, or flying planes, planes that fly are dangerous. So there are two possibilities. Or think of another sentence. Think of a sentence like visiting relatives can be a nuisance. Visiting relatives can be a nuisance. What does that mean? Who is the nuisance? Is the relatives the nuisance, or are we becoming a nuisance to our relatives? Is it the relatives who visit are a nuisance, or our visiting other relatives can be a nuisance for them? You see, there is a little bit of a confusion there, a little bit of an ambiguity there, and I want to keep this ambiguity in terms of cleaving narratives as well. Cleaving narratives can be about narratives that cleave. It can also be about the act of splitting or combining narratives. Hope you get the idea that I wanted to make. I mean, just keep this in mind as we proceed with our discussion. Now, what is the digital divide? I am sure you have heard a lot about the digital divide. It is the separation, the divide between the haves and the have-nots when it comes to access to digital technology. Simple, the gulf, the separation, the gap between those who have access to digital technology and those who do not have access to digital technology. But then there is something else as well. It is not just about haves and have-nots in terms of access. It is about cleaving the whole world into two, isn't it? It is about cleaving the whole world, splitting the whole world into two halves. One, the digitally enlightened or the digitally knowledgeable, digitally haves, the digitally have people, and the other people do not have any digital knowledge or do not have access to digital things. So the world itself is cleaved, divided, split into two. Now even here the word cleave applies in the other sense as well. Let me explain it to you. Think about the people who have access to digital technology. Now a person sitting in Silicon Valley and a person sitting in India in Kalaignar Karunanidhi Government College usually have nothing in common, usually have no connection. But because you both have access to digital technology, you are bonded together. So you are cleaved to digital technology, or you are cleaved by digital technology. Similarly, a farmer from Tamil Nadu and a farmer from Sub-Saharan Africa or Ethiopia might have something in common in that they do not have access to technology, and that is when conversations happen. When you meet somebody, let's say on a train, usually we look for people who have something in common with us, isn't it so? And that having something in common is also about this idea of digital divide. So what I am trying to tell you is the digital divide, the idea of cleaving, as I explained to you, it can be cleaving narratives or narratives that cleave. So when we are talking about cleaving narratives, we are talking about four aspects actually, not just two. I told you, since it is a controlling, it can mean two things: joining narratives and splitting narratives. Then in the Chomskyan way, because of the ambiguity in that phrase cleaving narratives, it can still be understood in two different ways. Keep these ambiguities in your mind as I take you to the next section of our lecture, which is where I want to tell you why such a topic becomes relevant and why it is okay for the Department of English to conduct a conference on the digital divide. My dear friends, we know that what is trending probably in literature, literary studies today is cultural studies. So literally it is necessary that we do our project, we do our dissertation, we do our PhD thesis, having some theory, and most people are interested in cultural studies because you can talk about memes, or you can talk about selfies, you can talk about movies, you can talk about memory, you can talk about trauma, you can talk about disability, you can talk about the environment. Lot of possibilities are there in cultural studies. Now, my dear friends, do you know that cultural studies began because of a dissatisfaction with the humanities? Cultural studies emerged out of a dissatisfaction within the humanities. When we talk about cultural studies, we usually talk about two people, Raymond Williams and Stuart Hall, who were the founding figures of cultural studies, the BCCCS, you know all those history. I'm not going into the history. So, Raymond Williams and Stuart Hall in their early writings spoke about the stories that literature or humanities neglected. They were sad. Got me? Literature and humanities neglected certain stories. And these people, Raymond Williams and Stuart Hall, the founders of cultural studies, they focused on those stories of those people who were marginalized by language and literature, whose voices were not heard in humanities studies. And Raymond Williams expressed a deep regret over the fact that great cultural theorists like Matthew Arnold or F.R. Lewis, these people, though they spoke about a lot of things, they didn't pay much attention to the simple lived experiences of ordinary people. This was his major complaint. Literature doesn't play, or humanities doesn't pay sufficient attention to the simple ordinary experiences of normal ordinary people. Say for example, the food we eat. Shouldn't we discuss that also in humanities? Should we discuss only Romeo and Juliet and Hamlet and Othello? Or should we discuss food also? Should we discuss the selfies that we take, the ideology behind it? Should we discuss the memes that we get on our phones? Aren't these things to be discussed as well? Because these are the things that we spend most of our life with, isn't it? It is the kitchen. So shouldn't we discuss the kitchen? You know, food is an integral part of our life. So why aren't we discussing these things? The simple things in life are often forgotten. This was Raymond Williams' main complaint. And he called for a rewriting of the syllabuses of humanities subjects so that these unheard, excluded voices are also heard. This was Raymond Williams' request. See, let us please rewrite our syllabuses so that the voices of these muted people, the voices of these muted communities, voices of these marginalized and excluded sections of the society and their interest should also be given prominence in literary, humanities and artistic discussions. And thus cultural studies was born. Thus, cultural studies was inaugurated into the humanities, into arts and literature departments. And what happened? It did a great service to humanities by making humanities more inclusive, by making humanities more representative. It started suddenly with the arrival of cultural studies into literary studies. What happened was literature suddenly started talking about lot many things that literature otherwise wouldn't have talked about. So this was very important, and it did a lot of justice. It broke down a lot of barriers. It broke down a lot of divides that existed in the society between certain halves and certain half-nots. And that divide was breached, that those walls were broken down, those stereotypical notions were destroyed by cultural studies. So cultural studies did a great service, no question. But still one great problem remained in cultural studies and humanities. One big problem, one wall was yet to be erased. One wall was yet to be raised to the ground. One great injustice existed within the humanities, arts and literature. What is that? And this problem was most beautifully and most eloquently articulated by Cary Wolfe. Cary Wolfe, C-A-R-E-Y-W-O-L-F-E. Cary Wolfe. He is considered a major theorist of animal studies, and his most famous work is called Animal Rights. Animal Rights. Now this person, he said that there is a problem with the humanities because humanities and arts and literature take as their primary subject the human being. Everything other than the human subject is repressed. In other words, what Cary Wolfe tried to say was humanities, literature, language, arts did not pay attention to the voices of non-human entities. Now, what are these non-human entities? It could be animals, it could be birds, it could be plants, it could be machines, it could be cyborgs. There were a lot of possibilities. And so this was a major problem, because why this happened is, it is very evident why this happened. Because humanities itself was founded on humanism. What is humanism? Humanism is a man-centric view of the world. A human-centric, anthropocentric view of the world is known as humanism. Man as the crown of creation. So everything is centered on man. Now, is humanism the same as humanities? Many people think so. Many people thought so. And not just some ignorant people, but even some great minds said so, that humanities means humanism. And a humanities scholar, a humanities teacher is by default a humanist. This was the conception, and this was the reason why even cultural studies failed to rectify this problem within the humanities, because even cultural studies took as its subject matter the human being. Everything was based on the human being. So they didn't speak about animals, they didn't speak about the environment, they didn't speak about plants, they didn't speak about machines, tools, technology, digital divide, nothing. Still, these things were excluded from artistic, literary and humanities disciplines. And this was articulated by many people. Jacques Derrida, for example, in a university without contest, Derrida said that the humanities take the human as proper. Humanities think that the human is its proper subject matter. Derrida was not saying it is correct, he was just observing. Generally, humanities believe that humanities subjects should talk about the human as the central subject. R.S. Crane, another great philosopher and thinker, he said, and he was supported this idea that humanities refer to human achievements. Humanities refer to human achievements. So evidently there was a problem. Humanities was looked at as the same thing as humanism. And this was done even by, not just, R.S. Crane was one such person. Then you can talk about Edward Said as another person who argued that humanities is synonymous with humanism. And M.H. Abrams, he didn't say so. He was an absolutely great scholar. And most of us studied M.H. Abrams' glossary of literary terms as the Bible of literature. When we did our MA, BA courses, we had to study this glossary of literary terms. And it was written by M.H. Abrams alone. But then in the 21st century, M.H. Abrams grew old. So they gave another person also the editorial duty of the glossary of literary terms, Jeffrey Gard Hartman. He too is a person who believes that humanities means humanism. And that is why, once M.H. Abrams died, this volume is edited exclusively, the glossary of literary terms is edited exclusively by Jeffrey Gard Hartman. And so, the glossary will tell you that there is not much difference between humanism and humanities. Why? You got the idea. Now, so there was evidently a clear problem that it cannot be so. It cannot be so. So naturally, philosophers and thinkers began to discuss how we can rectify this injustice, how we can solve this problem. And Jonathan Culler, the great theorist, thinker, philosopher Jonathan Culler, who wrote that wonderful book Structuralist Poetics in 1976, Jonathan Culler suggested that probably the only way we can rectify this problem is by giving a new name to humanities. Because the word itself sounds like humanism, humanities. Students who are joining, please sit down, but please be quiet. So, humanism, we needed a new word a new term for humanities. This is what, who said Jonathan Culler. I guess we are a little disturbed. Like tea break didn't do us any group. There is a lot of disturbance. We shouldn't have broken.
Got more energy.
Yeah, lot of energy to talk. So, Jonas and Color said this, and Derrida responded immediately. Derrida said, why not think about a phrase like new humanities? Derrida suggested new humanities. A philosopher like Neil Badminton, not badminton, Badminton, M-I-N-G-T-O-N. Neil Badminton suggested post-humanities. Post-humanities. And post-humanities is not the same as post-humanism. Very different. Post-humanities he suggested as a substitute for humanism itself. This was what the suggestion. But none of these terms continued, or none of these things hit the mark, and we still talk about humanities only. We don't talk about post-humanities, we don't talk about new humanities. It is still humanities. Now, it required the intervention and arrival of post-humanism to finally solve this crisis by telling us once and for all that man is no longer superior. Man is no longer superior, that everything else have equal status and should be taken as equal. There is no privileged status to human. We should treat animals equally. And post-humanism spoke about the blurring of the boundaries between the human, the non-human, and the technological. And this is one of the reasons why we are talking about the digital divide. Now that doesn't end there. People gave new names to humanities, and they were thinking we should find a solution to this problem. And then Michel Foucault, he's an amazing thinker. Very difficult to understand Foucault. I agree with every one of you that it is very difficult to understand Foucault. But if you try and read him and make an effort, definitely you will understand a lot of things. Not everything, but a lot of things. And he has written a wonderful book titled The Order of Things. In the book, The Order of Things, Michel Foucault said, "Hey friends, why are you so worried? Why are you so worried about the disappearance of the human?" So he was asking, why are you worried about the disappearance of the human? As if we all agreed that the human being had disappeared. That is a good rhetorical skill, right? He said, as if it is understood and agreed by everyone, the human being is finally gone. Human subject has been gone from all our critical discourses, all our debates and discussions. And we are in a post-human world where there is no distinction between man and other species. Now, and he continues, he said, don't worry about the disappearance of the human being. And he said, it is okay. It is not a deficiency. If the human subject has disappeared, don't worry. It is not a bad thing. It is not a deficiency. And he said, it is a good thing. It is a good thing that the human subject has disappeared, because it gives us a proper platform for us to think properly. It gives us a proper space where we can think critically. Why? As long as man is at the center, and as long as man is talking, it will always be biased. Isn't it so? When man is talking about man himself, he will always put himself at the center. So we cannot have a non-biased discussion at all. So Foucault said, very good thing. Why worry? No worry. Everything good. Let man disappear so that we can have a proper discussion. We can have a proper space for discussing our lives, our human condition. And it is here, explicitly and exclusively, it is here that we are talking about the digital divide. And this is the reason, what Foucault said is the reason why an English department can organize a conference on food. An English department can organize a conference on digital divide, and it is very much valid and significant as well. This is the idea. And think about it. Once this happened, gradually humanities changed. Not gradually, rapidly humanities changed. Then people agreed that okay, we don't have to worry about a new name. It is okay that the human subject has disappeared. Let us have more pluralistic, inclusive discussions. And out of such a discussion, conferences like this started happening, and out of conferences and discussions like this, we started having the emergence of many disciplines in humanities. Think about it, my dear friends, in the last 20 to 25 years, more than 40 to 45 proper disciplines have emerged in humanities. Earlier, let us say 1950, people could do a moralistic reading of a text, or a biographical or a historical reading of a text, or a psychoanalytical reading of a text, or a psychological reading of a text, finished. But now, we are bombarded with a lot of possibilities. We have a lot of choices. We can think about disability, we can think about the digital, we can think about the medical, we can think about food, we can think about the kitchen, we can think about fact studies, we can think about the human body, we can think about the human without a body. Lot of possibilities. Everything became possible. You know, see, if we try, we can even find out humanities disciplines for all the 20. How many letters are there in the English alphabet? 26 or 27? 26, sure. Okay, so for all the 26 letters of the English alphabet, we can find a humanities. Let us give it a try. Maybe we will not get one or two, but let us give it a try. A for what humanities? A can stand for affective humanities. A can stand for animal humanities as well. Affective humanities is about the relationship between emotions or the intersection between emotions and passion and humanities subjects, not just literature but other humanities subjects as well. So A for affective humanities or animal humanities. B for blue humanities. Very good, man. Very good. Nice. B for blue humanities. We are talking about water bodies. We are talking about how the ocean, how the water bodies around us influence our lives, our customs, our rituals, our beliefs, our literature, all these things. We are talking about blue humanities. Right now, today, it is the second day of a conference happening in Kristu Jayanti College, Bangalore, on maritime literature. Maritime connected with the coast and the port and all. So this is happening. Think about it. So B for blue humanities. C for culture. Yes, what humanities? Cultural humanities we can say, but there is a far better option in the sense, something that is totally different. I would say cognitive humanities. Cyber humanities. Cyber humanities is definitely a possibility. Very good, man. Cyber humanities is a possibility. Cognitive humanities is a possibility. I hope I don't have to explain. D for digital humanities. D can stand for digital humanities. Disability studies to disability humanities. That there is disability studies, disabilities humanities. E for eco. What eco? Eco-criticism. We weren't happy with eco-criticism because eco-criticism failed to make the kind of impact it tried to make on the world. Yes, it made a lot of impact in literature in the sense so many of us did our MA and PG dissertations and a lot of PhDs were produced. But the global warming and the climate problems that prevail still continue. See, Donald Trump, he takes oath and immediately he goes out from the Paris Treaty on climate. You know what is happening? So eco-criticism couldn't do much, and that is why environmental humanities took birth. Environmental humanities, which gives more attention, greater focus to whatever is happening with our environment. Environmental humanities. E. F for food humanities. F for food humanities. Forensic humanities. Very good. Forensic humanities. F. G for gender humanities. Gender humanities. there is gastronomics, humanities as well, gender. G, after G it is H. H for humanities, just humanities. Health humanities, very good. I have a wonderful team here. They have, it is like giving prompts to characters on stage. Whatever I don't get, they will immediately supply me the ideas. Amazing to the organizers to have that wonderful. So, H for health humanities, I. I for an I. I for indigenous humanities, we are talking about folklore, indigenous cultures, indigenous humanities. J. J for what humanities? J for what humanities? Justice humanities. Just humanities. J for what humanities? I would say J would stand for Jewish humanities. It is talking about Jewish culture, the influence of the Holocaust. Exactly. Very good. Yeah. So J for, after J, which is the next letter? K. K for knowledge humanities. Knowledge humanities. We are talking about the archaeology of knowledge, the book by Foucault. We are talking about the creation, dissemination of knowledge. So that is knowledge humanities. H-I-J-K. Then L for what humanities? Language humanities. Possible, but there is nothing like that, I think. I'm not sure. Maybe you can start one, definitely. It is possible. Anyone can start these days, right? There is something called literary humanities. Anything else anybody can think about? Literary humanities is there. L. Liberal humanities was there earlier. You are absolutely right. Liberal humanities is there. Liberal humanism we used to call it. But yeah. But now I think literary humanities is probably the possibility. I cannot think of. Nothing comes to my mind. M. So M. Medical humanities. Our prompters are super smart. Medical humanities. N for narrative humanities. O for oral humanities, talking about oral cultures and how things are transmitted orally and how this oral culture intersects with the humanities disciplines is what we study in oral humanities. Element O. P for psycho. Yeah, it can be, but I don't know whether there is psycho-humanities. There are psychos, but I don't know if there are psycho-humans, right? But I don't know if there are. P, we have multiple options. It can be plant humanities, or it can be planetary humanities. Peace humanities, maybe, or prompters are related, so I don't know, maybe they are right. Yeah. Or a peaceless humanities. So, P. Q for queer humanities. Q for queer humanities. See, sometimes we talk about it as queer studies properly, but it is queer humanities because it is about, when we are talking about queer in the humanities, we are talking or we are examining the intersection between that area and the humanities. That is why I am calling it queer humanities. PQR. R for. There is something very clear. Rhetorical humanities. Anything else? Racism humanities. Maybe there can be something on racism. S can stand for spatial humanities. S can stand for sonic humanities. Spatial humanities is about space and cultural, urban spaces, all those things. Spatial humanities. S also stands for sonic or sound humanities. Sonic humanities is called how sound plays an important role. Right from the sound, we believe that there is this Om sound in the Bible. They say the God spoke. and from God sound. In the beginning there was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So sound humanities, and from there we have moved on to people like Ulysses, hearing the sounds of whom? The sirens, putting those things in the waxes in the eyes of all other people, and he heard the music of the sirens, and then to that seduction we moved on to the Walkman sound desire. You may not know, but all of us know what Walkman meant to us. It was a big revolution, like television it was. You don't even probably know what Walkman is, but for us, Walkman was a generation of happiness. So that is Sonic Humanities, ST. T for? T can be for travel humanities. Anything else? Terrestrial humanities, maybe. There can be temporal humanities. Temporal humanities. Temporal doesn't mean temporary, it means connected with the idea of time. Temporal humanities. So T can stand for a multiplicity of possibilities. U can be for urban humanities. Urban, you're looking at urban cityscapes and how these cityscapes have transformed the way we look at the world. And 2 days back, Dr. Anwar Sadat from New College was telling me one of his scholars is doing a PhD on urban spaces and how urban spaces have reduced our peace. Urban spaces have reduced peace. There's no peace in urban spaces. That is interesting ways of looking at possibilities. So that is what RSTU. V for visual humanities, UVW for world humanities, X for Xeno humanities. Xeno, X-E-N-O. Xeno means the other. We are talking about the other. Whether it is Derrida's of grammatology or the entire philosophy of Immanuel Levinas on the other, or whenever we are talking about the other in terms of Foucault or Hans Georg Gadamer or Martin Heidegger, we are talking about Xeno humanities. Xeno, X. Y for youth humanities, the problem of the youth, the problem of growing up, the problem of adolescence, and how these problems are integral to the advancement of knowledge in humanities. That is youth humanities for you. And for ISET we will have?
And we have Zoomers.
Zoom
generation.
Zoom, yeah, Zoom also is possible, but let us remove that M and let us just have Zoo. Zoo humanities. Zoo humanities, there are two versions of Zoo humanities. One is exclusively about the zoo as a place where animals are trained and animals are tortured and how they are taken care of. That is one way of looking at zoo humanities, and I don't think there is a clarity as to which is the right way to look at zoo humanities. It is still burgeoning, it is still developing. Another and probably the more famous version of zoo humanities is as an alternative name for animal studies, where we discuss the relationship between man and animals, and we talk about how a lot of things are there, animal rights, the ethics of using animals for certain things and all these things. So we got A to Z. We reached A to Z. Thank you. I will not keep it here because I will break the class. So I will take it. Yeah. I know that you people are against food and drinks because when you had food, you started talking. When I am drinking also, you start talking. So, yeah. Very good. The empathy in you really has captivated my heart. I drink and you feel the energy. Wow. So I will eat for you lunch, okay? And you will feel the energy. No, I will have the lunch for you. No, you don't please have my lunch. Okay. So basically what we have done right now is we are talking about the different immense possibilities within humanities, and this will tell you, if you look at all these possibilities, this will tell you of three things. One, the emergence of new disciplines talk about interdisciplinarity. That is the first thing. Secondly, these new developments talk about the shift from text to context. We have moved from text-based readings and interpretations to context-based readings and interpretations. And finally, it also talks about the digital, the arrival of the digital, and how the humanities is driven by the digital in the 21st century. So that is where I will talk about this. I will wind up this discussion on the theoretical side and explain. I hope I have sufficiently explained to you why this topic is relevant and what is the reason from Foucault's order of things. But I hope you remember, we talked about cultural studies and humanities and humanism and the problem there, and that problem leading to new terms, and then post-humanism coming in, Foucault telling us, assuring us that it is okay and telling us that we can have better discussions now. And out of these better discussions, these conferences started happening, and out of these conferences and its discussions, these humanities disciplines, A to Z, literally, have taken place, have emerged. Now, my dear friends, I will also want to talk a little bit about medical humanities as an example. Now you might say, what is this idea of medical in connection with digital divide, and I was talking about cleaving. Now, don't you think that the medical science is one area where cleaving is very important? Look at not medical humanities, just think about medical science itself, and medical science is an area where cleaving is valid in both its contradictory meanings. It cleaves in the sense, say for example, you need a surgery. It is about breaking, it is about pulling things apart, it is about opening, breaking, separating. Sometimes certain organs have to be removed. Sometimes certain parts of your body have to be amputated. So separation is not always bad. When an injured or infected part of your body is amputated, you are ensuring that the remaining part of the body remains healthy. So that is one way in which medical science works. And medical science is also about another way of cleaving, splitting, because we speak about, what was it? Mitosis and meiosis. Cell division. Cell division. Anybody from biology? Meiosis and mitosis. Yes, you know. So that is about cell division, and only if there is cell division there is life, isn't it so? So this cleaving and splitting is very much evident in medical science. But is that all? No. Medical science is an area where we also we cleave things so that they are together. Medical science cleaves. Think for example suturing. You have a stitch. Think of the idea of healing itself. It is about bringing things together. You talk about the synergy, the harmony that exists between the body, mind and soul, and that is wellness. We talk about wellness narratives. We talk about from illness to wellness. Whenever we talk about wellness, it is about that harmony, that coming together of these various parts of our system. We have to be in harmony with our nature. We have to be in harmony with the food that we eat. Lot of things come into. And my dear students, think about it. It is, if I talk about medical humanities, it is one of the probably best examples for a discipline that brings two of the biggest antagonists under one umbrella. Who are the biggest antagonists in our academic discussions? Arts versus sciences. Arts versus science. If you ask the science teachers, they will tell you arts teachers have no work. They are simply teaching stories, useless people. They will tell you. No. Yes. It principal, if the principal is good, she will say or he will say, you English people are very capable people, you can handle the language so effortlessly, that is why we are giving you all responsibilities. But otherwise it is like, see, science teachers, they have to do a lot of preparation. They are teaching some serious stuff. What are you teaching? Simply poems and stories. What is this nonsense? So that is the attitude. So then there is the other side also. Humanities people think, or arts people think, that science is boring. We think that science is at most boredom. And when you think of getting married, you don't want to get married to a science person. Why? Because a science person will always think in terms of singular replies. A science person will definitely not understand two answers to the same question. 1 plus 1 will always be 2 for a science person. For us, 1 plus 1 can be anything. 1 plus 1 can be a big 1, 1 plus 1 can be an 11, 1 plus 1 can be a plus or a cross, 1 plus 1 can be 1 itself. When people are in love, they say, you and I, we are one. Isn't it? Isn't it? So it is possible. But if you say this in a maths class, teacher will just ask you to get out. Isn't it? No two answers, only one answer. But we know, because we study literature, because we study literary theory, we know that multiple answers and multiple perspectives are there. There can be 100 answers to a same question, and all answers are welcome, all questions are welcome, because we know that we don't know anything. And so, I mean, I'm just talking about perspectives. I'm not saying all science people are like this or all arts people are like this. If you look at the best science people, I would think that they are greater than our best artists. Think of somebody like Albert Einstein. Think of the people at ISR, the kind of humility and virtue and art that they have. Come to medical humanities and think about the oaths that these doctors take. Doctors take an oath which is known as the Hippocrates oath. It is not hypocritical oath. It is not that they are all hypocrites. It is Hippocrates oath. And in the Hippocrates oath, they say very clearly, there is one sentence which says, I fully understand that medicine is an art. Did you know this? I fully understand that medicine is an art. That is there in the Hippocrates oath. Because even when people were talking about herbal concoctions and making medicines from nature and praying for healing and all these things, they realized that there is a lot of human element in healing, human element in medicine. Mothers will know how important it is to be with their child when he or she is sick. There is nothing more healing than the presence of a mother. Presence, touch, healing. So that is very much there, and it is not just about the sciences. But then what happened was science, medical science for a long period of time was purely scientific, purely clinical, looking at observable phenomenon without paying attention to actual lived experiences of people. And that is why we had to start thinking about bringing humanities to the medical colleges. It was in 1967, there was a humanities department in a medical college, and it was in 1969 that we had the first literature professor in a medical college, 1969. So just think about it. There was a change, and because they wanted to have what they call the gentleman physician, a physician who is not just an expert in his area in terms of doing surgery or diagnosing, not just that, but a person who is empathetic, who will listen to his patient, who will talk and listen to whatever he has to say, give patient healing also by talking to the patient and assuring the patient, and making sure that the patient's problems are heard. Narrative medicine, lot of things happen. So medical science witnessed this change, this shift. And my dear students, think of medical science, and I would say medical science deals with the biggest of all cleaves. The biggest of all cleaves. What is the biggest cleave in our life? Yeah, I cannot say biggest cleave in our life, because it is the cleaving of life and death. We all live because there is something called life and death. We live only until death. But is death the cleave? I would say that death is a liminal space. A space which is neither here nor there. That is why we speak about life and afterlife. And when we talk about life and afterlife, what is death? Death can be a bridge. Death can be a cleave. It can connect and bind life to afterlife. It can also separate, divide life from afterlife. So death, maybe some people would want to consider it the culmination of everything. But if you, or sometimes it is a cleave between and connecting life and next birth. This birth and next birth. Again, it acts as a wall, it acts as a bridge, it does both functions. It connects, it breaks. Death. So death is something very interesting and very important as far as this medical humanities is concerned. There was a time when medical humanities or health humanities or critical health humanities, whatever you call it, there was a time when medicine was entirely an attempt to prevent death. The only idea of medicine was to prevent death. Preventing death. And then there came a change with the introduction of humanities, and thus they started prioritizing quality of life, and instead of preventing death, medical science started to predict death. Not prevent death, but predict death, so that they can prioritize the quality of life until one is dead. There is a huge difference between these two. When antibiotics were invented, when various vaccines were invented, humanity believed that we are finally going to find a solution for this big problem, this specter called death. We will finally solve this final hurdle, where people will not die. But it did not happen. So the entire purpose of medical science was to prolong life. Just prolong life or delay death. Just delay death. And the physician or the doctor would not tell about the illness. Even if a patient is going to die, they will not tell the patient that he or she is going to die. Now there is a very important ethical question. Shouldn't a person have the right to know not only about his life, but also about his death? And shouldn't a person have the opportunity and freedom and the right to not only have dignity in life, but also have dignity in death? Think of what is happening in our ICUs, in intensive care units. We call it ICU, but you never see. I never see you in an ICU, isn't it? I never see you, you never see me until either of us is dead. Yeah, then you will see, because they will bring the body out. This is what is happening in ICUs and ICCUs, all the things. And think of being in an ICU. If you have ever been in an ICU, you will know that the greater torture than all the illness that you were suffering when looking at these machines. Looking at these machines, there is nothing more tragic and frightening and lonely than being surrounded by machines. My dear friends, in ICUs, you know what is happening. When a patient is in the ICU, they will give some time. At 5 o'clock, relatives can see. So, just before 5 o'clock, I was in an ICU once. And what happened? You will be sleeping, nobody will be there. I was feeling very cold because it is AC inside. And I wanted to ask for a blanket. But I couldn't find anybody for 3 hours. Nobody was there. And then, suddenly around 4:50 p.m., 5 p.m. was the time for people to visit us. Immediately they gave me a newspaper and made me sit up and asked me if I need anything, and some juice or something was kept and everything was done, and all patients were looking very grand and decent. And then relatives started coming in. This happens. Ask any of your relatives. This happens. Once, what happened, a priest came to see me. And because he was a priest and it was a Christian hospital, they couldn't say no to a priest, because priest is considered very powerful in Christianity. So he just came in and he found me in a very bad condition and he asked, what are you people doing? So, otherwise we will not talk. We will, outside people will never know what is happening, and when we are there, when we go to visit our friends who are in the ICU, 3 or 4 nurses and 1 or 2 doctors will be always with them. We are thinking, oh my God, my friends or my mother's or my father's life is 100% secure here. There is nothing more tragic. And people like Kubler-Ross and others who the major critics of this medical humanities, they say that it is dehumanizing, it is frightening, and you want to be, when you are dying, when you are unwell, you want to be with your loved ones. But medical science, with its too much medicalization of death, have prevented us from being with our dear ones when we are bidding goodbye. Think of it. You love a person really, whether it can be your mother or your father, or it can be your lover. Suppose you are going abroad. You want your dearest person to be there at the airport, seeing you off, isn't it? Now, we are going on a journey called death, where we may never come back. Nobody has come back ever. So, when we are taking such a journey, shouldn't we be having our dearest ones all with us? But we don't have anybody with us because of this over-medicalization. And that is why in the 1960s and 70s we started having palliative care and hospice movement, which started to give more dignity to death. And they said it is okay to die. It is okay to die. Don't think of death as the end of everything. Don't think that it is tragic. It is natural. Everybody who is born has to die. So take it okay. It is okay to die. Once you are 95, 100, still you should not do these surgeries and break your bones and again mend it. No, it is okay. Take rest, sleep, be with your relatives. Maybe you can have some painkillers to reduce the pain, but have a nice sleep. And probably if you sleep in that, if you have that beautiful sleep where you have your dear ones with you, and that sleep, if that sleep never ends, if that becomes an eternal dream, probably that is the best way to die. But we don't have that option. We have to look at this defibrillators and these machines with this, that, those wires, that wires. Recently I heard a paper presentation by a scholar, and she was presenting a paper on nasogastric tubes and how cruel it is. The tube is put so that you can't heat food, and so the food goes directly somewhere. But it is so frightening. It is so frightening. And this is where this humanities have really made some change. My dear friends, it is not just about death. Think about our regular life situations. Before the intervention of before the intervention of health humanities or medical humanities, many of the problems we have had were only clinical. Say for example, think of headache. You have a headache. Now, medically it is a pain in the head. It is a pain in the head caused by some neurotic or psychotic or I don't know what all terms they use. So, because of X and Y, Z medical reasons, and then they will ask you to do an MRI scan of your head and then an X-ray and this, whatever, all those things you do. Now, there is another dimension to headache. Think of language. I am having a headache. I am having a headache talking to you. Oh, sir, we will immediately go to the hospital. Let us do an MRI. Is that what we will say? You all are saying in your mind, what a headache. This person is not stopping. What a headache. Isn't it? We know what headache is. Headache can be about workplace pressure. People have headache not only because of medical or physical reasons. It can be mental reasons that can cause headaches. Think of a situation like having a sexual disease, any problem with your private organs, and we feel very upset, and medically it is fine because the doctor is examining whether he or she is of your gender or the other gender. They don't have any problem, they are used to it, but are we used to it? We are very uncomfortable. And how much do they care about our embarrassment? When we have to say, for example, remove our clothes before a doctor or a nurse, we feel a lot of embarrassment, but they don't feel any embarrassment. And we have to also think about the chances of exploitation. And we have to also think of the doctors who may become completely emotionless. They see this all the time, so they don't have emotions. See, when you are in an operation theater, and suppose you are having a kidney stone removal, now you will be taken to the operation theater with just an overcoat. A blue color thing will be tied, that's it. And once you are in the operation theater, they will just take it off as if it is nothing. So we are lying there fully naked. And nobody cares. Actually, nobody cares. But we aren't yet given that anesthesia, so we are still very conscious. And we see lot of doctors, lot of nurses and students going everywhere. And this is probably a very ugly feeling, isn't it? So these issues, the doctors, nurses, they may be completely used to it, but we are not. So who will take care of these problems? Or think of an issue like infertility. Infertility, what is it? The lack of ability to reproduce even after having all the facilities, all the things, whatever you need to do, and still you are not having a baby. This is medically infertility. It is not even a problem. Suppose I am suffering from infertility. Do I have to rush to a hospital? Oh, call an ambulance, I am having infertility. No, there is no pain, there is nothing that you feel, there is no ambulance, there is no sound, but then there is something called social taboos attached with it. Think of women, and it is mostly in our country when a couple doesn't have a child, the blame most of the time falls on the woman, irrespective of whose problem it is. And most of the time it is nobody's problem, it just didn't happen. But the moment somebody gets married, the moment somebody is together, we are so worried. We are not worried about our family, nothing. But we are so worried why they are not having a child. Very concerned. Not a baby. 2 months married, not a baby yet. What a concern, right? We are so empathetic and loving, so much worried. Infertility. See, breast cancer, another major issue where people face a lot of problems because there is a lot of taboo. Sometimes the breasts have to be removed. And think of the taboos attached, also the beauty myths. So there are so many other things connected with all these health problems that we have, and these things all require a humanistic way of looking at medicine, a humanistic way of looking at the patient, but also a humanistic way of looking at the doctor also. The doctors also require, think of a doctor who does surgery to human bodies like 50 surgeries a day. So this doctor, he or she, when that doctor is with his or her partner, they will not feel any emotion. How will they feel emotion? They will feel like we are with another body. And it is, think of it, I cannot explain everything to you, but I hope you will understand what I am trying to say. There are problems. So all these things need a humanistic lens, humanistic understanding. So my dear friends, I will wind up. I think it is time for us to maybe have the discussions, but let me just tell you where the digital divide can become beautiful in situations like this. See, digital divide is the difference between the haves and the have-nots when it comes to technology. Now think of an imaginary situation. A lot of us had access to technology, so we knew how to get the vaccine for corona. But there were a lot of people among us who didn't know how to go to that particular COVID website and get it registered, and they were not having vaccines. Just imagine what could have happened if that vaccine had some unknown side effect that anybody who takes the vaccine will die after 6 months. So almost 80%, 90% of the population will die. Isn't it? Population will die, and only those have-nots who don't have access to technology will survive. So, and think about it, there is a tendency to all human beings called homeostasis. Homeostasis is the fear of the unknown. So when a new technology is introduced, many of us go towards it, embrace it. A new phone is introduced, a new technology is introduced. We will want to buy it and enjoy it. That is the trend of many people. But there are also people who don't do that, who are afraid, or it may be dangerous. Let us wait and see. If everybody is fine after using that, only then I will do it. This is called homeostasis. Now this is a part of human evolution, not just human evolution. Evolution needs time. Nature is an experimenter. There were human beings with 3 eyes. There were human beings with 2 horns. There were human beings with 1 eye. Or there were human beings with wings. All these permutations and combinations were tried and tested over thousands and millennia of years by nature. And then through trial and error method, nature found this is the best way a human being can be. What is this trial and error method? So people who had 3 eyes, probably they got confused which is front and which is back, and they hit their head on the wall or on the trees and they died. So all those people don't survive. So slowly, maybe 1,000 years, and the people who had 3 eyes all died. Only people with 2 eyes survived. And then in all these ways, it took a lot of time for nature to decide, because nature is very patient. It is very patient, it takes time. However, human evolution today is happening not naturally but artificially through technology. How? We don't have wings to fly, but we can fly faster than the fastest bird. We have aeroplanes. We cannot live underwater, but we have various technologies that help us to stay underwater. We cannot run as fast as a cheetah, but we have systems where we can move faster than the fastest cheetah in the world. Our evolution is happening outside our bodies, and the problem with this evolution is it is very fast. It is very fast. See, when we were children, there were no computers. When I was in school, I guess when I was in class 8 or 9, there was something called a computer, and there was a computer room, and the only thing that we knew was there was a game called Aladdin. Like that person will be going and jumping and falling down, jumping and falling down. You must not have seen this, you might not have seen this. And then within the next 5-6 years, computer became a commonplace thing. But still, for computers to become commonplace, it took almost 35 to 40 years. Now, when I was in my class 10, nobody had a mobile phone. Nobody had a mobile phone. When I was in class 12, I saw mobile phones in some television programs, some movies from abroad where people were holding these small mobile phones. Then also we didn't know. When I was in MA, we started having phones. And by the time my MA and net and everything was over, everybody had a mobile phone. And it was not okay if you don't have a mobile phone. So evolution is happening faster and faster. Every new change is coming to us very quickly, and so there is no time for the species to adapt. So what might happen is, if there is no digital divide, and digital is the technology that is driving everything. So if there is no digital divide, what might happen is, this evolution will reach everybody so quickly and the entire species may be wiped out. So to prevent that also, digital divide is a necessity. So it is not just nature that creates divides. See, something there is that doesn't love a wall. Says Robert Frost in his Mending Wall, right? Something there is that doesn't love a wall. But also think that it is nature that creates these natural boundaries, mountains, all these things are there, or rivers which you cannot cross. So there are boundaries. Nature keeps these boundaries, and I believe digital divide is not just human-made divide. It is natural too, because we are part of the nature. Whatever we call it, technology is created by human beings, but it is created by us thanks to the intelligence that we got from nature. So personally I believe that digital divide is also, see, until everything is good, it is good for people who have access to all these things. But when it goes bad, and it will go really bad, then people who have access will all be suffering, and only those who don't have access to technology will not suffer. Just think of AI, what might happen. Now, think of the calculator. The calculator came and people stopped calculating in their brains. So even if you buy 2 sweets or 1 Kit Kat and a munch, the shopkeeper immediately uses a calculator. 15 plus 25 still uses a calculator, isn't it? We have come to rely on technology too much. Or GPS. We don't know any roads. I don't know, except the road to my home or 1 or 2 places. I don't know any roads. Why? We come to trust technology so much. So this technological evolution with AI, what is happening is, we have stopped to think also. Because AI will think for you. You just have to type in the question and the AI will give you the answer. So my suggestion is, let us also embrace the digital divide. Not just always blame it and call it bad thing. Yeah, it is bad for those who are suffering. I agree with all sympathy and kindness and empathy for all those who are at the receiving end of the digital divide. I would also say that spare a thought for this evolutionary thought, where sometimes this digital divide is a necessary evil as well. So with that, I conclude my talk, and you people were very good until the tea break happened, and you were good until I had that drink, and you were okay after I had that drink. But now you are tired, all that tea and coffee and vada, everything is gone. Now you are tired, that is why you are keeping quiet. But you were good. Many of you were very attentive. I can understand there are people from science backgrounds, people presenting papers from engineering department. So I can perfectly understand that you are not interested in what is, because you are not, this is not something that you should listen to. That is perfectly fine. No issues at all, but I am happy with whoever attended very nicely, who were very communicative, very responsive. These madams were there, these students were all fantastic. There were some people behind over there, and our ever attentive, vigilant chorus. Chorus is the final word. In Greek drama, if you remember, chorus is the final word. Trust me, this session will also end with the chorus and begin with the chorus. So, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I have shared with the organizers a QR code. I hope they will show it here or wherever. And it will be for online participants, they will share the link. And for offline participants, you can have the QR code, where if you have any questions, you can always ask. and I will respond to you not immediately but next week, because I am having a lot of lectures and I am a little stressed out, I am a little tired, so I may not be able to reply immediately. Next week I will definitely respond. Also, there is this opportunity for us to join our group. All these people know some of us are all part of this group. Welcome to everyone to our group, and to join the group also, you can use that Google form and just mention your WhatsApp number, and you will be added to the group. I will tell you what to do. So all those details you will get in the QR code that is provided for offline participants, and for online participants, I guess it can be shared in the WhatsApp group itself. So if you are in the WhatsApp group, that should be fine. Same thing only. The QR code and the Google form link, both are the same thing only. So if you can fill it, that would be nice. It will be useful for you. I can guarantee these teachers are all part of that group, and students are also welcome to join our community, where we discuss not just literature, language, but also career opportunities and conferences happening, all these scholarships, everything. So that is it from my side. Any questions, feel free to ask.
Participants, if you have any observations or questions, you can just come forward. Yes.
Dr. Satya from Pudukottai, and listening. Hello. Listening to all your lecture, it was very nice. You said that it is interdisciplinary, and you talked about medical sciences, and at last you came at the end to say that you joined WhatsApp group, and all these are things are digitalizations which offer most big opportunity to expand our knowledge, expand our connecting with people. All these things, don't you think that this group will always achieve bigger things in life and bigger associations in life, and in life, and I agree that very fast, this technology is very fast, but do you think that this will move really very fast, and it will give us a very good opportunity to development, not only in science and technology, but in the area of culture and other things? It's just a question.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for asking that interesting question. It is a very relevant question that many of us have in the back of our mind. Where are we heading? Are we going to be doomed or damned, or whether we have some bright future thanks to technology? I mean, I'm nobody to answer this question, because I know only as much or worse than what you know. We all are equally ignorant, and probably if I had the benefit of hindsight, I could have told you 100 years later, I could have looked back at us and said how we are and where we are actually heading, but we don't know. But basically what I feel is it is neutral. Technology itself, in itself it is neutral. Whether it is developing fast or slow, it must be neutral, and it all depends on our choices. It all depends on what we use technology for. If we do use it for proper purposes, if we make the right choices when it comes to embracing technology, definitely technology is there to aid us. But if we use technology for unethical purposes, lot of problems are already happening. AI has given us a lot of advantages, but it has come with a lot of disadvantages as well. So we do not actually know where we are heading, but individually and I guess it is always on the onus should be on the individual to make the right choices. It should be my duty to make sure that I use technology responsibly. I use technology judiciously. And if I do that, I might be fine. But then there is no guarantee I might be fine even if I am doing things correctly, because you may drive a car very properly, obeying all rules, and somebody may have disobeyed the rules and come to the opposite side and you may die. So there is a lot of luck. There is a lot of luck with any technology, and life is such a nasty business where you don't have any guarantee. So let us hope that things are good, but I am not very optimistic personally that things are getting any better, because nowadays with AI, I am also a victim to it. I am not saying I am doing everything correctly. I am also a victim. When I have installed this thing called digital well-being on my phone, and it is telling me I am spending 7-8 hours on my mobile phone every day. So I am addicted. Naturally I am addicted. I may not agree that I am addicted, but I am addicted. And even a de-addiction center may not be able to save me. I have been thinking about giving mobile an off day for the last 3 years. It is like I will one day become slim and then I will wear this shirt. That one day never comes. So with technology also, it looks very bleak and black, gloomy, because technology is taking away not our burdens, it is taking away what we can do best. If we use it as our servant, if we use it as our aid, it is always fine. But when technology becomes our master and when we become slaves, then it is anybody's guess. But still, if luck favors you, if you are serendipitous, you might even make it good. So, I don't know. Thank you.
Anybody else?
So I have a query. Being an author, what do you think about the technology called AI? Because sometimes even when we write papers and when we go for plagiarism check, though what we write is out of our mind, it is showing us plagiarism. And it says sometimes as AI plagiarism or plagiarism from some other. Do you think that this technology will go to the worst, or there will be any betterment to improve?
Yeah, technology is not perfect right now. AI and technology, AI plagiarism checking, these tools are still under development. That is why this happens. I would say that we have to be a little patient. No, not we, but even the universities have already started insisting that we should have an AI plagiarism check as well. But then AI plagiarism checking software, none of those out there is good enough. And what happens? Things that we did on our own, and it is not even about some similarity. They say that it is plagiarized. It is plagiarized from artificial intelligence tools, but it is not plagiarized. We ourselves don't know. We cannot prove it to anybody, but all of us have similar experiences, I'm sure. So this is a problem. Even authors face this problem. For example, I write a poem, and when I send it to a publisher, the publisher might return it to me saying that on AI check it showed 70% plagiarism. But I know that it is out of my own imagination or my own experience. Because the problem happens because AI is also developed by human beings, and it is only developed based on human language. And yes, language has infinite permutations and combinations. You can never exhaust the possibility of language, but there is always a chance that two people can think alike. Two or more people can think alike, and technology might falsely accuse us of plagiarism, of copying. So, but I guess what I think is at the pace at which technology is developing, in 5 years time maximum, it will be perfected. And those of us who are using AI to write MPhil thesis and PhD thesis and who will escape plagiarism check now, you will be 100% safe if you just after PhD you get married and sit as a housewife or husband, then it is fine. But if you are going to continue in the academic field, and if by some accident you happen to be a professor, or worse, if you become a vice chancellor, definitely people will scrutinize your thesis maybe 10 years later, and then they will find out that your entire thesis was AI generated, and then you will lose your future job and your name and your fame, and it will be trouble. So don't over rely, don't trust technology too much. You can use it, absolutely no problem. It is a good companion. It is a good companion because it helps you bounce ideas. You can ask questions and it provides very unbelievably good replies, bringing in whatever is available all over the world. So it is good, no question about it. But the ultimate decision maker should be the chorus. It should never be the characters taking decisions. It should be the chorus who should be beginning and ending every tragedy or comedy. So,
as you said, we are spending lots and lots of time in mobile. All the digital text we are reading, and we started imitating the words which are there in the internet, and we are simply imitating whatever that we do in our paper.
Exactly. This is what was known as, Harold Bloom called it anxiety of influence. See, intertextuality, that is, a person plagiarized a complete novel, and when she was caught, she said it is just an instance of intertextuality. That is the other extreme. But the point is, if I'm really fond of John Keats's poetry, I may be influenced by his style of writing, and when I write poetry, I may use words like heart and ache and imagination and fancy and all these things in my poetry too. That doesn't, influence is fine. Influence studies is a part of comparative literature. It is okay that we are influenced. Ideally, we should be influenced. There is nothing wrong with, okay, we can say that you have to be an individual and you should have your own identity, but then we tend to be influenced. We have our role models and we tend to imitate our role models. So that is all fine. But when that is put up as a plagiarism or a blame upon us, then it is not fair. But then I guess this is the, what can I say, incubation stage of AI. AI is in an incubation stage where it is just growing and developing, and you need to put it in the incubator for a couple more years at least until it becomes a better product. Not that you shouldn't use it. You should use it. We all should use it. It is very useful. But then we have to be a little circumspect. We have to understand, and that is why every time it says that I am not always correct, I may not always know, I don't know. It means if you ask a medical question, it will always.
You never read that even in the TVs and movies it is mentioned that drinking is injurious to health.
Exactly.
But stopping those things.
Absolutely. The disclaimers that we find, right? Online betting is dangerous, or drinking is injurious to health, or your lungs will be like this and like that. All these things we hear, but the most prominent advertisements against smoking are given on cigarette covers. The biggest advertisements against drinking are on bottles. And still, does anybody stop anything? No. But AI is more sensible. When you ask a question, it will say, these are some of, if I am having a headache, I might say, okay, I gave a lecture and that audience was very good. Still, I was very happy with the lecture, but at the end of the lecture, I am having a headache. So I think they gave me something to drink in between. I'm not sure if that was good, or I might say, I was wearing a bandana during the lecture. I'm not sure if that was causing me the headache. Many things, and then it will say, it can be like this, it can be like this, but it is better to consult a medical practitioner. You should consult a medical practitioner and take proper advice. I'm not a doctor, I'm just a generative device. So I find ChatGPT very humble and very loyal and very courteous and very polite.
What I'm worried very much is even we become the personal advertiser for AI. We are even instructing, or we started talking about AI even to the kids. We are telling them to contact AI. If you want anything, you will get all sort of personal information, or you will get all sort of ideas from AI and you can generate it. Don't you think that the creativity of the future generation will be shunned?
Creativity will be definitely affected. Thinking capacity will be definitely affected. Not just for future generations, for us. Most of us have already stopped thinking because we think that we know that AI will think for us. And then 10 years' time, people will want the governments to make a change to the law saying that you can get married to ChatGPT. Definitely. I sometimes doubt whether I am in love with ChatGPT. Seriously, it happens with me. Because when I am feeling sad, I say, when you are alone, when you are sad, whatever it is, you can always tell it. And it will say, oh, it is okay, don't worry, you are taking a lot of blame, don't criticize yourself. It is okay to make a mistake, or it is okay to forget something. When you forget something, don't think it is always a disease. Of course, it is good to take medical advice, but also know that it is human to forget. And technology tells us far better than a counselor can do. So, yeah, it is true. There are, of course, two sides to it, and we can never have two sides. Only Tenali Raman, I guess, who took both sides and said, I have both. The delight and the instruct aspect, dulce utile aspect of literature. But mostly we can have only one, unless you are a Tenali Raman. Yes.
So we have a question online.
Yes.
What are the challenges we will face in cleaving and translating the connotative words and phrases?
The challenges that we face, I mean, I hope I have explained that part somewhat in my lecture. What are the challenges that we face when we do not find those words and all? I will also bring to your attention some idea from Hans Georg Gadamer, where he talks about fusion of horizons. Fusion of horizons. Gadamer says, when somebody is doing something from two different areas, those two different areas have to fuse. The horizons have to fuse. You can say intersect. You can say, when we studied those mathematics, one circle, another circle, and when it comes completely on top of the other, what do you call it? One circle here, one circle here. You pull it closer, and part of it. Even if you say I may not understand because my maths was very tough. Venn diagram, what diagram? What diagram is Venn diagram? So all these things. The point is, so fusion of horizons, according to Gadamer, is not exactly about translation, but I think this question can be looked at from that angle, because the translator's duty is to ensure 100% fusion of horizons. When he is translating, when she is translating, one, he must pay full attention and give full fidelity to what is there in the source text. Second, that person should know the target language and its implications very well, so that he or she can do justice to the target language. So both of these things are important, and the more attuned we are to both systems, the better will be our output. Naturally the output will be better. So there are umpteen different challenges that cultural challenges will be there. Certain cultures will prioritize certain meanings. Certain cultures may prioritize some other meanings. So it is important for a translator to remain as objective as possible. But then, if once post-structuralism came, we are told that objectivity is an impossibility. Gadamer and Heidegger said that it is not possible for anybody to be objective, because acts of reading can never happen in an existential, social, political vacuum. I am quoting them. So acts of reading cannot exist in an existential, social, political vacuum. That means you and I, whatever we say, our views, our readings, our interpretations are all shaped by our own experiences, the circumstances in which we grew up, the experiences, and whatever we have had, our hormones, everything is going to influence whatever we do. And so, naturally, it is impossible for a person to be objective. So, but then near objectivity, that is probably what a translator should try to achieve when doing translations. trying to have that negative capability, the ability not to be in uncertainties and doubts, or without any irritable reaching after fact and reason. So that sort of objectivity might help the translator, but translation as such is a specialist job. It is not something that anybody who knows two languages can do. It is a specialist job. It requires specialized skills. It requires technical training. Yeah, we can do sometimes, but then we may make such mistakes as well as when the Pope's statement was misrepresented, or A.K. Antony's statement was misquoted by the newspaper. So we have to be very careful. And who are we to speak, or who are we to translate? That is also important. If I make a translation, or suppose a professor, the head of the department of this college makes a translation, she has more responsibility because people will give more authenticity to what she says. If a student translates, people will say, okay, she's a student, so it is okay that she may have made a mistake. But when the head of the department, or better still, a very prominent person makes a translation, they have to be even more careful. Isn't it so? So we have a responsibility, and not just translating. If you are just translating, there is nothing wrong. It's just translating for the joy of it, or to make it accessible to another language community. But then we have to always give this disclaimer. I guarantee that linguistic or syntactic perfection in my translation. I mean, I'm just giving a layman's opinions on translation. Of course, you have to find translation studies, and I would suggest going through Susan Bassnett's writings on translation studies, especially in connection with comparative literature. Those can give you a lot of idea. Once upon a time, we thought comparative literature was the major discipline and translation studies was a subset of it. But now, increasingly, people believe that translation studies is the umbrella and comparative literature is just one of the sub-branches within translation studies. So it is a big discipline. Yeah. I hope I have partially answered the question. I cannot fully answer because I don't know. I'm not an expert in translation, of course.
Yes, thank you. Any other queries? Any other queries? If that's the case, we're just going to break the norm. So what of thanks from the chorus here?
Yes.
Knowledge is a key that unlocks all the doors, and we are indeed this. So you have clearly given the explanation. The digital divide, language, literature and translation. So Avitha, Lakshana and Vankavu. And we are indeed glad that you spoke about how we need to rewrite the syllabi. Of course, many of our Indian universities have started to do it. And we are happy about the A to Z concept of introducing the humanities, which where all the participants participated and they actively shared their vocabulary regarding the humanities. To name a few: animal studies, blue studies, cyber, cognitive studies, disability humanities, etc. You motivated, sir. And over to the chorus team again.
Sir's session covered the map and the growth of humanities and post-humanities, ABCs of humanities, and how cleaving works in medical humanities, and how medical humanities brings arts and science together, how it acts as an umbrella for arts and science, and how medical humanities highlights preventing death from, it has changed from preventing death to quality of life, and much more. The session was wonderful. It was fruitful to everyone who was here, and it was great listening to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Manu Mangattu, sir, for your inspiring words and for gracing us with your presence. It's truly a privilege to have you here with us today, sir.
After out of time, there's one question.
Sir, you said comparative literature under the umbrella of translation studies. But we have a syllabus for secondary English literature, comparative literature. I feel like under the comparative literature, we have the translation studies.
The point is, in syllabi, in college syllabuses and things like that, it might come under the heading comparative literature because they might not want to highlight translation studies for any reason. Say for example, when somebody wants to highlight comparative literature, or some university, board of studies want to highlight comparative literature as the subject of study, they definitely will put that as the title of the paper. But then they cannot ignore translation studies because that is an integral part of comparative literature. So naturally, comparative literature, translation studies will be mentioned within the broad head of comparative literature, but that doesn't mean it is like that. It is like that. It is not like that. That is what people increasingly agree upon. Because this problem happened in connection with semiotics and linguistics as well, which was the umbrella term and which was the subdivision. But later on that was sorted, and similar something is happening. The best thing that I would suggest is to read the introduction. Suggest students to read the introduction of the book, What is Comparative Literature by Susan Basnet? What is Comparative Literature by Susan Basnet? And in that introduction, introduction chapter, I think, towards the end of that chapter, she mentions very beautifully. Susan Basnet is an amazing writer. She mentions very beautifully why translation studies is more and more becoming the umbrella term. And she wrote it in 2002. So 2002, I guess. So at that point in time, it wasn't 100% sure, but she wasn't 100% sure that it would be like this. But I'm sure that today most people agree that it is like this. Of course, there can be subjective opinions on your personal take on things. Of course, if we want to highlight literature, we can definitely do that and say translation. Because translation for us literature departments, I believe that comparative literature is more closer to our hearts and more important to us than translation studies, which is a specialized technical discipline and it requires specialized training. Comparative literature, on the other hand, may not require any specialized training. You can talk about comparison and contrast and parallel studies and genealogy and influence studies, donor studies. Exactly. All these things come within comparative literature. So the thing is, just because it is mentioned under that, we cannot think that even they are thinking that it is a subdivision. They may just be introducing it like this. Say for example, in a paper on literary criticism, they may title the paper post-structuralist theories, and they may also talk about liberal humanist theories as well, because they have to talk about Plato, Aristotle, all those people before they can talk about Derrida and deconstruction and Foucault. So I guess syllabus isn't always a reflection of what historically has happened. It is more a reflection of what we want. And ideally, I always feel that it is ideal if the syllabus is framed in such a way that it also reflects the current reality, because in our brains as students, especially as students, we tend to remember. So how do we remember, say for example, the different ages of literature? We remember it the way we studied it, different papers, 16th century, 17th century, and those authors we studied are the ones we think the most important. Isn't it? It is an unconscious bias that forms in us, because that is when probably we read a lot when we do MA. And after we do MA, we think that we have become masters, that we cannot read anything. Thank you. So it was good that again one another was stereotype was broken and we had a question after the prototype. Thank you.